effort to be here. 84 years ago, on the night of November the 9th, in 1938, then what Kristallnacht was violent anti-Jewish demonstrations which broke out across Germany, Austria, and parts of Czechoslovakia, which were all occupied by the Nazi regime at the time. Now, these were pogroms, which were against the Jews. Now, the Nazis tried to depict these as a justified reply to the assassination of one of their officials, who was killed by a 17-year-old Jewish boy who is distraught about the deportation of his family from Germany. But over the next 48 hours, violent mobs, spurred by anti-Semitic rhetoric from Nazi officials, they destroyed hundreds of synagogues, they burned and desecrated Jewish religious artifacts throughout the countries, and all told, approximately 7,500 Jewish-owned businesses, homes, and schools were destroyed. 1,400 Jewish synagogues and prayer houses were attacked and burned, and some 1,400 deaths, Jewish deaths, were caused as a result of the pogrom. Some of these were caused by imprisonment, some of them even by suicide as a result. An additional 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps such as Dachau and Buchenwald. Now, in the aftermath, the Nazi officials claimed that the Jews were responsible for this pogrom, which affected the Jews. And they put a fine on the Jewish population, a fine of what's worth about $400 million on the Jewish community in Germany as a punishment for the pogroms, which was against the Jews. It was insane. And in the 10 months in the aftermath of this pogrom, over 200,000 Jews emigrated and left occupied Germany and occupied other countries which were occupied by Germany as a result, as a direct result of this. And to give you a sense of how bad it was, people often ask, where were the emergency services? Synagogues were burning, places were being plundered, people were injured. Where were the emergency services? Well, I'll tell you where the emergency services were. Just before midnight on November the 9th, the chief of the Gestapo, his name was Heinrich Müller, he sent a telegram to all of the police units and he informed them, and this is what he said, it's a direct translation, in the shortest order, actions against the Jews and especially their synagogues will take place in all of Germany. These are not to be interfered with. This is a direct instruction to every single police department in Germany. And rather, the police were told to arrest the victims. Indeed, fire companies were not allowed to attend to the fires, and they were instructed to let the buildings burn unless it will affect some neighbors. Unbelievable to remember this. And indeed, I heard from an older gentleman, a rabbi who passed away in 2021 in June. His name was Rabbi Reuven Bulka. He was a little kid when this happened in Germany, and he remembers attending what was called a cheder, a little study group where they used to gather to learn. And he came to school that day, and a child ran into the classroom and said to the teacher, "My house is on fire." And they called up the fire department, and they reported the fire, but the fire said, "I'm sorry, currently it's illegal for us to come and tend to that fire." That was what happened. It was against the law to put out a fire in a Jewish home over Kristallnacht. And later on, they gave it the name Kristallnacht, which in German means shattered glass, which means more than just the shattered glass of the buildings. The Germans saw this as a shattering of the entire existence of Jews in Europe of the time. Now, I'll finish with a very brief silver lining, which for me warms my heart, which was one Jew. He was a professor. His name was Sir Ludwig Guttmann. He was a German-British neurologist. He was born in 1899 to a German Jewish family, and he was always fascinated by paraplegic patients and how limited their disabilities seem to make them. And I'm going to make the story brief, but you can do your own research about him. Fascinating stuff. In 1937, he was working at a Jewish hospital in Breslau. He was only allowed to work in that hospital. He already had his title doctor taken away from him because at that time Jews weren't allowed to practice medicine. He was given the title Krankenhandler, which in Yiddish means somebody who deals with the sick rather than a doctor. And when Kristallnacht came around, he was forbidden, as all the hospitals were, to take in Jewish people that were casualties of the events. Despite that, he ordered the staff in his hospital to admit anybody that needed to come in. The following day, he gets a visit from the Gestapo. The Gestapo said, "What's going on? We heard that you took people in to your hospital through Kristallnacht." And eyewitnesses relate that as the Gestapo walked around eyeing his patients, he walked behind the Gestapo, made funny faces, trying to indicate to the patients in the hospital beds to pretend that they're having mental breakdowns in order that they wouldn't be sent, deported and sent out of the hospital, and that he wouldn't be punished. And indeed, out of 64 admissions that he took in over Kristallnacht, through his actions, risking his life and his entire career, everything he had, he managed to save 60 of the patients. Only 4 of them were deported to concentration camps when the Gestapo walked through. He went on later to leave as a direct result of Kristallnacht. He moved to Britain, to Oxford, and he set up a department of neurosurgery. And he continued to be fascinated by the limitations that paraplegic and spinal injury patients had. And he believed that sport, the mental gymnastics that what came with training for and competing in competitive sports, would be the solution and would help them break down the barriers. And he pushed the limits. He created an international idea called the Stoke Mandeville Games. Some of you will be familiar with it, but you'll all be familiar with the direct continuation of it, which later became the Paralympic Games, the Parallel Games, which until today nowadays is the 3rd or 4th largest sporting event that we have. He created this from a vision that he had when he saw that people with disabilities shouldn't be limited, and he pushed them beyond their boundaries, and he made them competitive, and he created this amazing thing from the depths of the destruction, from the shattered glass, from the trauma and the suffering that he saw the light, and he managed to create this worldwide phenomenon that we have until today. Nowadays, this is an inspiration to millions. He truly rose from the ashes. He rose from the depths of hell, and he created one of the largest and most inspirational sporting events that we have. And this really does teach us not to limit ourselves. And this, indeed, should be our response to anti-Semitism, to rise above the fray, to make change and to push people to places that they thought they would never be able to accomplish, things they would never be able to accomplish. And indeed, the famous German philosopher once said, he said, "The only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history." Well, today, all of you have proven that you have come to learn from history, and that is truly an inspiration to me. Thank you for being here.